The sound that stopped everything was not a scream, not a crash, not even the roar of a motorcycle. It was something far quieter, the soft rustling of a plastic trash bag behind the school cafeteria. A tall biker froze mid-step as he turned the corner of the building, expecting nothing more than an empty alley and the smell of leftover lunches. Instead, what he saw made his entire body go still with disbelief. A small girl, thin, dusty, her backpack torn at the straps, was digging through the trash with shaking hands, carefully pulling out half-eaten sandwiches and wrapping them in napkins as if they were treasures. For a second the biker didn't breathe. Then the girl lifted her face toward the sunlight, and he realized something that made his heart slam like thunder in his chest. That girl was his daughter. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness and second chances can change lives, take a moment to like this video, comment the word kindness, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel Only Kindness so we can keep bringing you stories that remind the world compassion still exists. The biker's name was Rocco Velez, a man whose presence alone could silence a room. He stood nearly 2 meters tall, with broad shoulders wrapped in a black leather vest decorated with patches earned from years on the road. His beard was thick and dark, his arms covered in tattoos that told stories of battles, loyalty, and loss. People in town knew him as a member of a notorious motorcycle club often associated with the Hells Angels network, and most kept their distance whenever they heard the thunder of his bike approaching. Yet beneath the intimidating exterior lived a father whose entire world revolved around a single person, his 12-year-old daughter, Maribel. Life had not been kind to Rocco. Years earlier, Maribel's mother had died after a long illness that drained nearly every dollar the family had. Hospital bills swallowed their savings, and when the small construction company Rocco worked for closed during a recession, the problems multiplied. Jobs became temporary, rent became uncertain. Pride forced Rocco to hide most of the struggle from the outside world. He still managed to keep a roof over their heads, but some weeks were tighter than others. He always made sure Maribel had dinner at home, even if that meant he skipped meals himself. What he didn't know, what he had never imagined, was that his daughter had quietly begun going hungry during school days. That afternoon Rocco had arrived early to pick her up after a short construction shift ended sooner than expected. His motorcycle rumbled into the school parking lot like distant thunder. Students were still inside finishing lunch, and he decided to walk around the side of the building while waiting. That simple decision changed everything. Seeing Maribel behind the cafeteria dumpsters felt like watching his heart shatter in slow motion. The sunlight illuminated the embarrassment on her face as she realized someone had seen her. Her eyes widened with panic and shame, the kind no child should ever carry. For a moment neither of them moved. Rocco's mind raced, trying to understand how this had happened without him noticing. Had she been too embarrassed to tell him? Had the school ignored it? Had other kids mocked her? Each possibility ignited a deeper fire in his chest. Maribel quickly tried to hide the food she had gathered, wiping tears from her cheeks with dirty fingers. The sight of those trembling hands searching through garbage for scraps struck Rocco harder than any fight he had ever faced. The enormous biker who had survived bar brawls, cross-country rides, and years of harsh roads suddenly felt completely powerless. But that helplessness lasted only seconds before something else rose in its place, an overwhelming, protective fury that surged through him like a storm. Inside the school building, laughter and chatter echoed through the cafeteria as if nothing was wrong. But outside, behind the dumpsters, a father's world had already changed forever. Rocco knelt slowly in front of his daughter, his massive hands surprisingly gentle as he lifted the dirty sandwich from her fingers. The moment carried a silence heavier than any words could fill. In that silence, Rocco realized the truth. While he had been fighting to survive each day, his little girl had been fighting her own quiet battle alone. That realization lit a fire inside him, and when Rocco Velez stood up, the anger in his eyes carried the weight of every mile he had ridden and every promise he had ever made to protect his child. He whispered one word under his breath: enough. What happened next moved faster than anyone in that small town could have imagined. Rocco stepped away from the school building and pulled his phone from the inside pocket of his vest. The contact list contained numbers belonging to riders scattered across several states, men and women who had shared long highways, difficult pasts, and an unbreakable sense of loyalty. They were not perfect people. Many had rough histories and reputations that made strangers nervous. But one thing everyone in that brotherhood understood was family. Rocco sent one message. It was short. It simply said his daughter had been forced to eat from trash at school. Within minutes the replies began appearing. By early afternoon the quiet roads leading toward the town started to tremble with distant engine roars. At first the sound was faint, like a storm far away. Then it grew louder, rolling across the hills and echoing through the streets. Motorcycles. Dozens of them, then hundreds. By the time the final rider reached the town limits, nearly 200 motorcycles had gathered in a powerful convoy that stretched along the highway like a river of chrome and leather. Locals stared from shop windows and sidewalks as the rumble filled the air. Teachers inside the school glanced nervously toward the parking lot when the sound reached the building. The school administration had no idea what was about to unfold. One by one the motorcycles pulled into the parking area outside the school gates. Engines shut off, leaving a strange silence in their wake. The riders dismounted slowly, their boots hitting the pavement in heavy rhythm. Leather vests, patches, and helmets gleamed in the bright afternoon sunlight. Parents arriving to pick up their children froze in confusion. Students pressed their faces against classroom windows. No one had ever seen anything like this in their quiet town. At the front of the crowd stood Rocco, his daughter beside him, holding his hand tightly. She looked overwhelmed, unsure why so many intimidating strangers had suddenly appeared. But as each biker walked past her, something unexpected happened. They didn't stare. They didn't laugh. Instead, they nodded gently or offered soft smiles. Some of the toughest-looking riders placed small bags of groceries on the ground near the school entrance. Others carried backpacks filled with lunch supplies, notebooks, and snacks. Within minutes the pile of food and school materials grew so large that teachers stepped outside in confusion. Rocco stepped forward toward the school doors. He did not shout. He did not threaten anyone. But the seriousness in his expression made every adult listening understand that this moment mattered. He explained calmly what he had seen behind the cafeteria. A 12-year-old girl searching for food in the trash. His daughter. The silence that followed was heavy with guilt. The principal tried to apologize, explaining that the school offered a meal program but paperwork issues sometimes delayed assistance. But by then the message had already spread beyond that building. The riders standing in the parking lot represented more than a motorcycle club, they represented a community that refused to ignore a child's suffering. That afternoon turned into something no one expected. The bikers began organizing supplies, delivering food boxes to families who quietly admitted they were struggling too. Several riders offered to fund the school's meal program so that no student would ever have to go hungry again. Others volunteered to help repair the aging playground equipment that had been broken for years. What started as anger slowly transformed into action. Maribel watched all of it from beside her father, her eyes wide with disbelief. For months she had felt invisible, embarrassed by her situation and afraid to ask for help. Yet now an entire parking lot full of strangers had arrived because someone believed she deserved better. Rocco looked down at his daughter and saw something returning to her face that he had not seen in weeks. Hope. As the sun drifted lower in the sky, the convoy of motorcycles eventually prepared to leave. Engines roared back to life one by one, sending a powerful vibration through the warm afternoon air. But before climbing onto his bike, Rocco knelt again beside Maribel. He gently wiped a smudge of dirt from her cheek. In that moment, the hardened biker with the fearsome reputation looked less like a legend of the road and more like what he had always truly been. A father. The motorcycles rolled out of town slowly, their thunder fading into the distance as evening approached. But the story of that day spread quickly across the community. Within weeks, the school established a permanent food pantry for students in need. Local businesses began donating meals. Neighbors offered support to struggling families. All because one father refused to stay silent after seeing his daughter suffer. Years later, Maribel would remember that afternoon not as the day she was caught behind the dumpsters, but as the day hundreds of strangers showed her the meaning of loyalty and compassion. Now if this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes kindness still exists, and subscribe to the channel Only Kindness so more people can hear stories that remind us humanity is stronger than fear. And before we finish, here's a special request for you. Please write the word respect in the comments if you believe every child deserves dignity, protection, and kindness. Because sometimes the loudest roar in the world is not an engine. Sometimes it is a father's voice finally saying, "Enough, heart."